Okay, before we start today's video, just like to make an apology for part two of this video. For some reason, the playback is a little bit jerky. Now, the filming was okay when I filmed it. It was okay when I uploaded it. So I'm just putting it down to a glitch on the YouTube channel. I have noticed it on other people's videos as well. So I just hope it didn't ruin your viewing pleasure too much. Also, I had a bit of a Homer Simpson moment on that video too, because when it came to this section here for part M23 that went on the little reactor, I was saying I couldn't see where that part would fit on the front of the Eagle. That's because it doesn't fit on the front of the Eagle. You only fit that part on the rear pod. So that was me not concentrating on the instructions. So apologies for that. That's just me getting a little ahead of myself. And so, like I say, hope it's you've not followed it to the letter and sorted that out yourself when you've read the instructions. Okay, so hello, welcome back to the Adrian Project. I'm Adrian with a face for radio, and on today's episode we're going to be doing part 3 of my MPC 148 Eagle Transporter build from space 1999. So cue the music. Right, so we start off and it's part 13 on the instructions. Now this is fitting the vertical cage bars onto the front and rear assembly pods. Pretty easy really, a little bit fiddly to start off with, but if you use a thicker, slower glue, then it'll give you plenty of wriggle room to make sure that you've got all your piping work in the correct position, and then you can put the bottom part on and it all locks into place. Right, so apologies if you can hear a lot of noise in the background. Today is truly a horrendous day. It's absolutely tanking it down with rain, so it's a perfect day to stay in and do a bit of modelling. Okay, so as we can see, that is the framework done around the front and rear pods. Pretty simple. Like I said before, use a slower setting glue, gives you plenty of wriggle time. All you've got to make sure is that there's one part here with a little cutout that goes around that part there. You can see it. Just make sure you get that in the right position, and when you've done it, put that onto the top part, glue it all down, and it makes a nice sturdy cage. As you can see, I've also glued in these reactors. I do mention this later on in the video, but I forgot to do this part without these bits glued on, so you're going to have to excuse me for that. Okay, so that's all that little bit done. I'll say it is a little bit fiddly, not as fiddly as this bit, but a little bit of patience, take your time, and it's really easy. So let's move on to the next section. Okay, so I let all I did on part 13 dry for 24 hours, and after that I decided I'm going to go back to section 10 and make up the gauges. Now, as it says in the instructions, I used part B63 to check the angle. But also what I did, because I used a thicker, slower setting glue, I decided that I'm going to dry fit part B9 onto the front of the pod, and then just while I've still got enough wriggle room with the glue, I made sure by dry fitting the subsection of 10 onto the front pod there, making sure that everything was in place and all the angles were correct. And I gave it a little more time just to set, and then carefully remove them all the parts, double checking using B63 just to make sure that I didn't alter the angle any narrower or wider than it should have been, and I had to do that for 4 sections. Right, so section 10 on the instructions, and it's making the little cages. So when you've done, you'll end up with 4 of these, and like I say, take your time, use a slower setting glue just on these joints there. Don't be tempted to put any on those, or you'll glue it to the part. And when it comes to this section that you'll know, just do a quick dry fit. Get the piece the right way around. So there we go. Just doing a quick dry fit. I don't want to be forcing the pieces on, but you'll know then that they are all at the correct angle. Pretty straightforward again, like I say. It's really well engineered kit, so you can't go too far wrong, I don't think. So you make those parts up. Just make sure, like I say, there's the part there. Just make sure you can check your angles there. So when it comes to it, just make sure that those run along the top of the part there. It's a bit tricky to show you on my camera, but there you go, and I've just snapped that one off. So I'm going to have to do that one again and put some more glue on it, but you get the gist of it anyway. So there we go. Well, that happens to us all, doesn't it? But there we go. Just don't fiddle about with them too much after you've done, just like I've done. All that's going to happen. So I'm just going to go away, glue that back on, get all that sorted again, and we'll move on to the next section. So this takes us on to the final part of the build for this video. As you can see, what I did, I took the subsections from part 11 in the instructions and I glued them onto the front and rear pods. Still leaving off part M23 on the rear pod because there is enough room in there to get the part in, just to make sure you get the angle right when it attaches to the engine part at the back. So that swiftly moves us on to part 16, which is fitting the landing gear pods for the front. Now, I suggest that when you come to doing this part, you look at the instructions because you have to get the orientation right on each of the parts. So just make sure you know which parts you're doing. Do them one at a time. Don't rush. Don't try to do all 4 at the same time. Do one at a time. You're not going to go wrong. What I did as we're going along, as you can see, I labelled which pod was which. So you got rear starboard, rear port, front starboard, front port. So I just put a little bit of masking tape on, put FP for front port, and so on. So I knew which ones they were. Now, as you look in the instructions, it tells you that you only use part Q39 on the front pods. That means you have to remove the pin from parts H47 and H48 on the rear pods. Really easy to do. Quick swipe of the craft knife, sand sanding stick, and job's a good one. And when you've done all that, you should have 4 pods altogether. Okay, so here we go. So after doing all that, you should have 4 of these. Pretty straightforward build, it's just making boxes up. So like I said, you only have that part there, that goes on the two front ones. The rear ones doesn't have it, so you have to take the tab off and just sand it down smooth. What I've noticed on this, it is going to require just an absolute smidgen of filler. There are some very, very small gaps here. Nothing that even the most basic skilled modeler like myself can't handle. Just a bit of Vallejo filler in there for me, and the job will be a good one. So you've got all those four parts. Really easy part of the build, that, nothing to worry about. Just make sure, like I said, you do it one part at a time. Make sure you get all the orientation of these parts in the correct order. It will show you on the instructions, so just follow it step by step. You could even mark off as you do it to make sure you don't get confused, and that's really nice and easy. So that's the build for today. Bit of a heads up for the next part, because we're going to be moving on to the cage work for the engines to fit. Now, I have seen other people's videos of this build, so I would advise you to get a lot of change and the sway box ready for when we do that part. And that's the end of yet another episode. I hope you all enjoyed that one. If you did, and you haven't done so already, could you please remember to subscribe to my channel. At the moment, I'm aiming to get 1,000 subscribers, and as soon as I hit that 1,000th subscriber mark, I will donate at least £20 to Macmillan nurses here in the UK. For those of you living outside of the UK and you don't know who the Macmillan nurses are, they are there to help everyone with cancer live life as fully as they can, providing physical, financial and emotional support. I myself have had their services firsthand, and I can tell you they are exceptional. A lot of the time they do have to rely on public donations, so if you'd like to find out more about Macmillan nurses, or in fact give a little donation yourself, then please visit www.macmillan.org.uk. Okay, I'd like to thank you all again for watching. It's very, very much appreciated. Don't forget, you can still follow me on Facebook and on Twitter if that's going to be easy for you. And here's to seeing you all again on the next episode of the Adrian Bow Project.